down. Better dig deep, put them in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. They're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Law podcast. And one of the critical issues that has now, stepped up, and some people have seen this as a critical issue for quite some time, is educational freedom. And we saw that and how it became a forefront issue last year in Virginia when all of a sudden Terry McAuliffe is on the stage and he says that parents have no right to be involved or engaged in decisions about the education or really indoctrination of the children. Then all of a sudden people start to show up at school board meetings. And how does the Biden administration respond? By Merrick Garland calling parents domestic terrorists. Well, we're here to talk, as we promised, with Alice Linahan, who has been at the forefront of this for so many years. And many of the things that she talked about over the past decade or more, they've come to fruition now. Maybe she's kind of like our own little educational Nostradamus. But Alice Linahan is an established leader in new media and education policy advisor with Voices Empowered and vice president of Women on the Wall, connecting the dots between the issues of education, immigration, and national security. Alice is the author of Your Child's Number One Threat, 21st Century Learning and the Common Core. Alice has worked tirelessly exposing the dangers of college and career readiness, Common Core aligned global standards, educating people on the seriousness of the issue and how best to be engaged in the battle. Alice Linahan speaks publicly throughout the country to educate parents and taxpayers on the truth about what is happening in education and the unilateral mental disarmament of the next generation of voters in America. Alice, thank you for joining us here at the Steadfast and Law podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Here we are sitting in the great state of Texas, and all of these things that are going on, you don't have to go to California. You don't have to go to New York. It's happening right here in the Lone Star State. So this past weekend, we just had the Texas Association of School Administrators and Texas Association of School Boards have a meeting down in San Antonio. Now, both of these organizations are taxpayer funded.
Yes, they are trade organizations.
Correct.
They are funded with tax dollars and grants from people like Bill Gates.
Now, let's talk about some of the topics that were discussed this past weekend, because you would think that the Texas Association of School Administrators and the Texas Association of School Boards would be talking about better education opportunities for children, how they can increase learning. I mean, 67% of fourth graders in the state of Texas can't read at grade level. No. What were they talking about?
They were talking about the LGBTQ language and how to implement it into our schools and how to deal with parents and how to use the correct language and the laws that will back them up. There was a presentation, the LGBTQIA update, Terms to Know, Texas Law, and the Talking Heads.
So, again, taxpayer-funded entities coming together to meet on our dime, and they're not talking about better education standards. They're talking about this divisive agenda that they want to see indoctrinated into our kids.
That's exactly right. And the fact that this was even a presentation at this conference, when you track back and look at where this is all coming from, it just blows your mind how far the left and those who want access to the next generation of American children to modify their values, beliefs, and behaviors. And there has been a systematic implementation and changing not just of laws. We're no longer governed by laws. We're governed by rules and regulations written by unelected bureaucrats, such as Mike Morath and the TEA.
Texas
Education Agency. There are some key organizations and entities that are in Texas who are implementing TASA, the Texas Association of School Administration's new vision of public education. You've got the TEA, which is run by an unelected bureaucrat, Mike Morath, appointed by Abbott. You've got the State Board of Education, which are elected officials.
13 or
15, I think.
That's right.
They should be overseeing the TEA. That's not what's happening. So, and then you've got the education service centers. We've got 26 of them, and they service our school districts. They provide the professional development for our teachers on how to implement what's learned at these conferences. Then you've got TASA, the Texas Association of School Administrators, TASB, the Texas Association of School Board, and there is billions, and I mean billions, of dollars funneled through these organizations to implement this. Common Core was it's a global curriculum standards, and they rebranded it. We have it in Texas. They'll say we don't have it, but they just rebranded it College and Career Readiness Standards. But these standards are they developed from UNESCO in the United Nations. And they are implementing this worldview that you're no longer that kid from Keller, Texas, Southlake, Texas, who gets a job and lives in a global world. You are now a global citizen.
Yeah. And you hear that a lot.
Yes, who happens to live in America. And that's what, when you look at the LGBTQ, agenda, we can track it back. It's interesting. Here's a guide, an activist guide called the Yakarta Principles that gives the blueprint of how to implement this agenda through state laws, regulations. This was developed by a group in Yakarta, Indonesia, and then taken to the UN to get, approval. Yeah. And then they started implementing it. Interestingly, Obama changed the regulation. He didn't change the law. He changed the regulation on Title IX. Mm-hmm. When he changed that regulation, Title IX, we can't discriminate based on sex. You and I would think that would mean we can't discriminate based on male and female. Well, he changed the language in it to say that you can't discriminate based on sexual preference.
Yeah, this whole gender identity thing that is ballooned now.
And that came directly from the Yakarta Principles.
So this is the thing, is that we're not dealing with something that just popped up overnight.
No.
And you've been in this space for quite some time, as I said. How many years has this been working to get to this almost culminating point?
I have a manual, or a research manual, that was written in 1994.
Wow.
That lays all of this out. But it goes back to the 30s and 40s and looks at federal and state laws that have been passed to lock this system of control in place like a set of gears. Mm-hmm. And in the past, in the United States, we had a kindergarten through 12th grade system. You went to school, you graduated in 12th grade, and you were free. You were free to go down a vocational path. You were free to go to college. Mm-hmm. College actually meant something. But you were free to, and you held your destiny in your hands. Mm-hmm. That has shifted to what's called a P20W system, prenatal, actually, through the workforce. And in this system, we've got to collect data, and we've got to have a portfolio on each child from womb to tomb.
You know, that kind of reminds me. Remember during the Obama administration, they had the Life of Julia thing. I mean, it tracked the little girl Julia from the moment she's born all the way through. To me, this is not just about educational freedom. This is about educational sovereignty.
Yes. That's a really good term.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And if you track back, it's interesting. Back in the 1960s, there was a law passed, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Okay.
That was the first time federal dollars came back to the state to teach economically disadvantaged children how to read. Sounds great. That was in the 1960s. They still can't read. And now economically advantaged children can't read either.
Yeah.
But that law was reauthorized under Bush and called No Child Left Behind.
Yep.
What No Child Left Behind did, if we're not going to leave any children behind, we've got to test them. So that was the first time you had federally mandated tests on children.
But where's the jurisdiction of the federal government for this?
Nowhere. But if you take the money,
Yeah.
you take the rules and regulations. So, and at that time, it was illegal to have a national database system. And so what they did is they set up 50 separate database systems, the statewide longitudinal database systems. And so we're collecting data, we're testing and we're collecting data on students. That bill, or that law, was reauthorized again under Obama and called the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so when you take the money under Every Student Succeeds Act, you must implement the college and career readiness global standards. Obama also changed the regulation on the FERPA law, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, to say that our children and their teachers' data can be collected without consent in the name of research. And that's what opened up Pandora's box for people like Bill Gates and all of these technology people to come in and have complete access.
And data mine our children. So, you know, again, I sit and you're saying that in this administration, that administration, well, we live in a constitutional republic. People don't just get the opportunity to wave a magic wand. Well, now they do. By edict, order, mandate, and decree. This is supposed to go through a legislative process. So why is it that these things are getting passed? Are people, well, I'm about to give a rhetorical question to you. Obviously, these members of Congress, and I used to be up there with them, they're not reading these pieces of legislation. They're not doing the background research, and they have staffs and whatever to do that. But it seems to me that the same thing just has the title or the name erased. We put a new title on it that is very oxymoronic. Sounds good. But when you get into the text, it's not. And so what's the next iteration that's coming about that we need to be looking for?
Well, you hear the STAR test. The STAR test.
Here in Texas.
Yes, we need to get rid of the STAR test. And I agree, it's not a valid test. But what's coming next, and which has already been implemented and is passed into law, is called the Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability. And the number one item on that is online, real-time, digital learning and curriculum. And so you don't need textbooks anymore. We're going to assess you in real time using technology. And remember, an algorithm is an opinion written into code. Whoever's writing the algorithm controls the outcome.
Absolutely.
And so we need to be aware of this. Technology in the classroom is the evil. Because just like, you know,
it can be a good.
It can't, just like guns.
Absolutely.
It's who's behind them. And so we as parents, with Women on the Wall, we had and we're still running it, a call to action. Parents, taxpayers need to go into their children's schools, all schools, public, private, charter schools, even into your homeschool curriculum, and ask 3 questions. Can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? What is the professional development of the teachers?
The methodology.
And the instructional materials that are being used. And number 3 is, which opens up Pandora's box. Can I see who's financially benefiting from the curriculum on which my child's teacher is evaluated? Because there was a big push for this, and you've talked about it many times, outcome-based education. There was a big push in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was veteran teachers who actually knew how to teach math, 2 plus 2 is 4, who pushed back against it. The difference between then and now is the technology. And the teacher's evaluation is tied to if they are implementing the technology with fidelity. It has nothing to do if we're not hiring teachers that actually know subjects. We're hiring teachers as facilitators.
Basically, robots for an ideological agenda.
That's
So,
right.
so how do we, because one of the things I think, when folks look at what is happening with journalism in America, I say, well, look who took over all the schools of journalism in the United States of America. What is happening on our college and university campuses then in these schools of education?
They have been completely taken over by the left and funded. That's the key.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. It is so scary to see, even like this conference, this TASA and TASB conference. It hadn't, the conference sessions were nothing about teaching kids to teach the basics, which gives
Reading, writing,
them
arithmetic.
an equal opportunity
There we
at
go.
success in life.
Yeah.
It is all about third-party public-private partnerships who have access through these entities to our children for profit. It's interesting. I looked up this law firm that presented this LGBTQ. The website for this is EdLaw. When you look into this law firm, they are making so much money off of presenting how to implement this crap into our schools. And we're funding it with our tax dollars.
Amazing.
My call to action is to defund TASA and TASB. Our local school boards can not approve the funding that goes to these conferences, not approve funding for TASA and TASB. They have the power of the purse. They just need to understand
Well,
it.
this is when it comes back to why the school boards is such an important position. Because they have to get the right type of people in there that are interested in educating our kids and not indoctrinating our kids, which brings me to the next thing. How long have we had, everyone's acting like this is a new phenomenon, but I don't think so. With all these books, these, pornographic material really, that are in our schools. But again, it seems like it is just taken off, and the drag queen story hour is just taken off. I think the Child Protective Services,
Yes.
if you're exposing our kids to adults in a sexualized atmosphere manner, to me, that's the whole reason why we should have a Child Protective Service. Why are we not protecting our kids from this type of stuff?
Because it's coming in through the education system. And that's the key, is understanding they targeted our education system. The people who and there's varying people. There's a lot of people who were probably at this TASA TASB conference. I know some of them who went thinking they were doing the right thing. They have no idea the history, the background, the laws that have been passed. When you shift which is what TASA's, Texas Association of School Administrators, funded by Bill Gates, the new vision for public education is a shift away from reading, writing, math, and history to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. And then it just becomes whose attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors.
Yes.
And this is all mandated by law through the Every Student Succeeds Act, implemented at the state level by Republicans and Democrats alike. And they passed the laws to align with the Common Core College and Career Readiness Standards because we're taking the federal money. Then it goes to the SBOE, and they put in place the curriculum and the
Yes.
standards.
Yes.
Then the TEA takes all of that legislation and the curriculum and the standards, and they write the rules and regulations, and they execute the no-bid contracts with these third-party entities. The TEA is a corrupt, evil organization. And it needs to, just like the Department of Education at the federal level, the TEA and the people who are running it, whether they have all the right intentions or not, they are implementing a system, this P20W system of global education that is funded by people who want to take America down from within.
You know, amazingly so, 10 to 15 years ago, people would have listened to Alice Linahan and said, she's a kook.
They
she's
did.
a conspiracy. She's a conspiracy theorist. I mean, she's just making all this stuff up. And look at where we are. You know, and the importance is that here we are in Texas. Let's talk to the critical aspect of this occurring in Texas, because the SBOE here in Texas, State Board of Education, when they make the decisions about curriculum and things, most of the rest of the nation follows. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because in Texas, the State Board of Education in the past would approve textbooks. And what we did in Texas, the textbooks, because we purchased so many through our permanent school fund, which is a whole nother can of worms. But we purchased it. So whatever we did, and that vetting process of textbooks was so key and fundamental in keeping our education system academic. That and the rest of the country followed. What happened in, I believe it was 2011, lobbied by Thomas Ratliff, who was a paid lobbyist for Microsoft, lobbied to pass a law that said that that permanent education fund no longer had to be used just for textbooks, but it could be used for online digital learning curriculum and the professional development of teachers. That law, the changing of that law, opened up Pandora's box. That's what opened up the door for these technology companies to come in, and then you had FERPA, the change in regulation. That's when you know, when you start looking at the blueprints, when you look at TASA's vision and you actually read them, which most people don't have the time to do. They're just
But they
trying
need to find the time.
They need
These
to
are
find
your
out.
kids.
Yeah, these are your kids. When you look at the blueprint, it's all laid out what they're doing. You just have to go, and you know, when you go in and say, can I see what you're teaching, you go from can I see, which is really a weak position for a parent, can I see to I can see. I can see what you're teaching. I can see how you're teaching. I can see who's financially benefiting. It's not my child, and it's not my child's teacher.
Yeah.
And we need school board of elected school board members, and we've got some that we've got elected, and we've got, when they go in and push back, we've got to have their back.
We do.
And when I was going out and doing this 10 years ago, and people said I was crazy and a conspiracy theorist, and I would go to my school board meeting, they just marginalized me. But I was all alone. And that's what I tell people when I go and talk to these parents and I present all this and they're wide-eyed and scared, as they should be. But I say, take a step back. One, this is your child. And your number one priority as a parent is to protect that child.
Yep.
And so when you go in and you go from can I see to I can see, and you see, don't be alone. Don't be alone. Don't go into that school board meeting alone.
Yeah.
You go in with an army of people around you. And I'll tell you, and we talked about it, Lynn Davenport went in last night into DeSoto ISD to expose what they were about to pass.
And DeSoto is a suburb of Dallas.
Of Dallas, yeah. And Lynn's been at this. She's been on your show. She's been at this a long time like I have, and she has the battle scars like I do. But what we do a lot of times, and I think she mentioned it on your show, is that she's not necessarily going to get them to listen because they're not always going to listen.
Yeah.
But she's doing it to create content because the media is not going to cover it.
And it has to be televised.
And it has to be televised. That's right. And so create that content so that we can share it. And when parents go in now and they start making waves, when school board members are elected and they start making waves, they need to understand they're not alone, that there have been people fighting this battle before them, and we will stand with them, and we will we'll be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I don't mind being the agitator anymore. I've got thick skin now.
Yeah.
And so we've got an army of people here in the state of Texas, all over the state. We call ourselves the mutineers. And we will stand together with any group of parents, school board members who will take a stand and have taken that journey of understanding it and we're not going to be quieted.
In the final minutes that I have with you, Alice, here's the hypothetical situation in question. You are now the head of the Texas Education Agency. Top 3 things that you would do walking into that office.
I would sever all no-bid contracts. I would call for a full audit of the TEA. I would call for a full audit of the rules and regulations written by the TEA. We need to have a comprehensive study of what laws have already been passed. We just keep passing laws, and we don't know what we've already passed.
Yes.
And there's so many contradictions in the laws and in the rules and regulations that have been written by law. So there needs to be, and I don't know that I'm qualified for that position. I know an army of people who are. And so I think it's going to take...
Yeah, but God doesn't call the equipped. He equips those that he calls.
That's true.
All right.
That's true. Well, there are an army of people, and I think that our kids are worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Peg Luxick, who's been fighting this battle years and years ago, and she was one of my mentors. Someone asked her, why is it all these women who are out there fighting against this?
Listen up, man.
And she said, a man will die for his child. He will stand in the line of fire and die for his child. A mother will kill. And that mama bear instinct.
Wait now. I kind of take offense to that a little bit. No general statements. That was a very sexist statement.
Hey, we are men and women, and we have God-given roles.
Yes, we do.
I believe, and instincts. And I think men are called to this battle, just like you are, to find our place, to protect our children. And I have hope. One, God is bigger.
Yep.
I think this is so in our face now, which it wasn't 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
It is so in our face. You can't disagree that this is a fact.
That's a blueprint.
It's the blueprint. And so the information, the facts are there. The question is, what are we going to do with it?
And that's the bottom line. You know, that really is the arrogance of the left in saying that we're coming for your kids. We're showing you exactly what we're going to do. We're going to drag your kids to Drag Queen Story Hour. We're going to bring your kids into a gay bar in Dallas for a drag show. And oh, by the way, in Roanoke, Texas, we had Antifa outside, guarding the drag queen show. We have churches that are having drag queen bingo hour and bringing kids in. We're going to indoctrinate your kids. We're going to kill them in the womb by dismembering them. We're going to gender, mutilate your kids and all these things. So when are we going to stand up? And look, Alice is right. Hey, guys. There's a reason why I have that tomahawk here. See, the tomahawk is not a defensive weapon. The tomahawk is an offensive weapon. And I know that the lefties that are listening to this are saying, oh, Colonel West is threatening people. He's going to go whack people with a tomahawk. Alice just told you, if you screw around my child, I will whack you.
Right.
And that's how serious we need to be to make you all back down. Because we're in a fight for the future generations. And if we continue to allow all of this to come to fruition, and especially here in the state of Texas, that's why this is such an incredible battleground for education. And the things that we see happen in Texas should not be happening. Alice, where can people follow you and all the great work that you're doing?
You can find me at Voices Empower, EMPOWER.com. I've got all of these documents, all this information, articles that we've put together over the last 10 years. So, or you can find me at womenonthewall.org, and we are in it to win it for our children and our grandchildren, and we will not back down.
Now, how can people get you to come out and speak if need be?
You can send me an email at alice@voicesempower.com, and I would be happy to come out and speak and help equip parents and school board members on how to fight back.
You know, guys, when the mama bear comes out there and grab her cubs, she needs to look over to the back to the papa bear, and the papa bear needs to take care of business. Alice, thanks so much for being with us here at the Steadfast in Law podcast. God bless you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And,
Thanks
it was a crazy member of Congress who about 10 or 11 years ago, he was asked about socialists and communists being up there on Capitol Hill. He said, absolutely. He said they're, Congressional Progressive Caucus are about 75 to 80 and chastised, disparaged both sides of the aisle. And now we've gotten to a point where people are wholeheartedly admitting they're socialists, they're Marxists, they're communists.
Yeah.
So be encouraged, because a leader has vision, and you are so prescient in that you saw this, and you were the voice in the wilderness, like John the Baptist. So we thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
God bless.
Before they burn it down.